In January of 2016, researchers whose names I will put on the screen because I'm not going to try to pronounce that, published a paper in Royal Society Open Science concerning, quote, the ancient roots of Indo-European folktales. Their work was very technical, but a good summary of their method is given by David Schultz through sciencemag.org. They used the well-established language tree model, which traces all Indo-European languages back through their development in history. Thus we see that English and German came from a different branch than French and Spanish came from. But all four of those languages go back to a different branch than Hindi and Bengali. But all of those languages do still unite into an original Indo-European trunk, which is distinguished from the Uralic trunk that Finnish and Hungarian sprouted from. The point is that if you can show that a particular folk tale is present in the language of both French and German, and furthermore, if you can show, using statistical methods that I don't understand, that there is no probable way for that particular tale to have been shared between France and Germany through trade or travel, then the only option left is to assume that France and Germany both got that same distinct tale because it existed prior to both of them in the general European branch from which both French and German separately sprouted. France and Germany, of course, are not the best examples because they've had a lot of interchange in history. But if you could find that same essential folktale in the deep oral tradition of, say, an insulated tribe in the depths of northeast Siberia that no one knew existed before 1905, then you're really in business. The researchers found, after all their analysis and pruning, that several folktales still in circulation today very likely had their origins from the very base of the language tree. One, in particular, The Smith and the Devil, must have, if the research is right, originated from before the Indo-European language itself, about 6,000 years ago, or 4,000 BC. It is accompanied in age, rather more tentatively, by The BoySteals Ogres Treasure, The Animal Bride, and The Grateful Animals. The Smith and the Devil, as told by Da Silva and Teherani in their paper, the basic plot of this tale, which is stable throughout the Indo-European speaking world from India to Scandinavia, concerns a blacksmith who strikes a deal with a malevolent supernatural being, e.g. the devil, death, a jinn, etc. The smith exchanges his soul for the power to weld any materials together, which he then uses to stick the villain to an immovable object, e.g. a tree, to renege on his side of the bargain. The boy steals Ogre's treasure. This is where we get Jack and the Beanstalk from, and the title is pretty self-explanatory. A young boy sneaks into the lair of an ogre or giant, hides from the ogre's searching so as not to be caught and killed, steals the ogre's treasure, and then later slays the ogre by some means of trickery. The Animal Bride concerns the youngest of three brothers who they regard as an idiot. Their father sets challenges before the brothers, and the idiot brother succeeds best at them through the help of a magical animal, usually a mouse or a cat. Then, once the challenges are completed, the animal helper transforms into a beautiful maiden, and they are then happily married. Finally, The Grateful Animals, ATU 554, in which a youth, often once again the youngest of several brothers, chooses to spare several different animals from impending destruction, such as a boot falling onto an anthill, etc., thus earning their gratitude. Accordingly, they assist the youth in completing several tasks, each adapted to one of the animals, and thereby he wins the marriage hand of a princess. So, a man cheats a demon, a boy slays a monster for treasure, an animal transforms into a bride, and several animals help their savior. In all of these stories, there is an essential element of cleverness or trickery used to resolve an otherwise impossible problem. Brute strength is not what saves the day. There is also the idea that a prize has been thereby won, and of course, the protagonists are all male, though frankly that's kind of debatable for the Animal Bride, at least the way it's usually told. The Animal Bride and the Grateful Animals are rather similar because in both it's not by the young man's own merits, but those of the animal or animals that he wins the day and gets married. The principal means of victory is cooperation, not the protagonist's own skill with the given challenges. It is different with the other two stories, The Smith and the Devil and The Boy Steals Ogres' Treasure. In these, the hero is more directly responsible for his victory. Although, even in The Boy Steals Ogre's Treasure, there's sometimes the character of the giant's wife who assists the boy in killing her husband. Also, in these two stories, the prize is not a wife, but some form of lucrative alchemy or smithery, for instance, a hen that lays golden eggs. More than this, I am uncomfortable saying because I feel I do not have enough information to make actual judgments about what these stories say about humanity. Except for the story of The Smith and the Devil. I'm just going to speculate like mad because I've been thinking about this for a while. This is the oldest story, and it has captivated my attention. While I have little more than intuition to back up my ideas, I am nevertheless going to spin for you some ramblings about it that might give you a new perspective on the world in general. First of all, note that the story is a little subtler and cleverer than, say, The Legend of Faust or The Devil Went Down to Georgia. For Faust ultimately loses to the devil, and Johnny the Fiddler simply beats the devil in a quantitative battle of skill. It's another form of brute strength, winning the day. But with the Smith, it's different. He trades his soul for a power, which he then uses to get his soul back, and furthermore bind the soul collector forever. So it is not at all unlike wishing for more wishes. It's not fraud per se, but trickery. The Smith didn't break any rules that were laid down. He legitimately outwitted his opponent, exploiting a loophole in the contract in order to eat his cake, but also keep it on his plate. The law of equivalent exchange, of conservation of energy, of the very economy of the universe was thus circumvented. The story begins in a stagnant balance. The Smith can have either his soul or magic powers, and whichever the Smith has, the devil holds the other. But through the Smith's cunning, he overcomes this either-or and gets both things, leaving the devil with neither. So it's a Hegelian dialectical triumph. It's a true synthesis. The Smith doubled his talents. The Smith used the very gift that the devil gave him in order to overcome the devil. Space is now opened up for progress, for upward movement, for development, for life, for grace. The Smith and the Devil is, I believe, the same essential plot underlying the story of the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. The devil is legitimately tricked into doing the very thing that ultimately binds his hands forever. The Smith exchanged his soul for a sealing binding power, which he then used to literally bind down the devil. Eve and Adam exchanged their paradisiacal ignorance for moral knowledge, which they then used to reject the devil and eventually restore their paradise, except it's now conscious this time. So it seems to me that a universal human experience is that something is very wrong or out of whack with the world we live in. I think everybody feels that. There is suffering or evil in the world. Something isn't right in the world. That seems to be what people, at least from the default, feel. There are things we don't agree with on a fundamental level. These bad things are attributed to the agency of a devil or a malevolent being, as in the book of Job, where Satan is allowed to wreak havoc in order to break Job's spirit. Thus, to exist in this evil universe, one effectively makes a kind of deal with its curator, the devil, as it were. If the traditions are true, and there is inherent evil in material flesh attributable to the devil's influence over the earth, then our position is that of the Smith in the story. You can have a body, says the devil, and sojourn in this realm, but you will inevitably become morally corrupted and broken by that flesh, so that when your time is done, you will be a devil like me. In effect, your soul will be the devil's. So the dichotomy is thus: either the soul, the seat of one's free will and morality, or the body, the means for actually instantiating that will in a material reality, the means of dealing physical pain and joy on oneself and others. So this was the quandary hypothetically posed to Adam and Eve, at least in the story. Either you create bodies for the souls of God's children, only for them to fall by the billions into the devil's slavery, or you stay in Eden and preserve those souls from their foolhardy ambition to come down here and instantiate their wills. What could possibly convince Adam and Eve to choose the former option? Only the promise that the second option could also be achieved, if not guaranteed. Adam and Eve were in the position of the smith. By bringing children into the world, by starting the whole human story, they made a deal with the devil. But by starting the human family, they made the birth of Jesus Christ, the mediator, the Savior, possible. Thus, the devil was tricked into giving mankind the very means for attaining a body while retaining a soul.